When you think about the US dollar, what comes to mind? Probably cash, right? A way to buy stuff. But what if I told you it's also one of the most powerful weapons on Earth? Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're going to explore how America wields the dollar, not just as currency, but as the silent, incredibly effective tool of foreign policy. I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this huge shift in modern power. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the biggest hammer the West swung wasn't military at all, it was financial. They didn't have to fire a single shot to inflict massive, and I mean massive, economic damage. They just cut key Russian banks off from SWIFT, which is basically the text messaging system for the entire global banking world. It was like they just flicked a switch and turned off Russia's ability to do business with almost anyone. And the impact? Wow. It was immediate and brutal. Within just a few days of being cut off, the Russian ruble lost 40% of its value. 40%? Just let that sink in for a second. An entire nation's currency slashed almost in half, nearly overnight. This just shows you the raw, unbelievable power we're talking about. So the big question is, how on earth is this even possible? All right, so let's pull back the curtain and see how this weapon, this system, actually works. And really, it all boils down to one simple, kind of mind-boggling fact. Just look at this chart, that huge slice. It shows that a staggering 88% of all global trade is settled in US dollars. So think about it. When Brazil sells coffee to Japan or Saudi Arabia sells oil to Germany, that transaction is almost certainly happening in dollars. It's basically the default language of global business. And this special role, it has a name, the world's reserve currency. It means countries all over the planet hold vast reserves of US dollars to keep their own economy stable and to pay for all the stuff they import. It's the ultimate safe haven asset, the very bedrock of the entire international financial system. So here's the bottom line. This is the crucial part. Because everyone needs dollars to trade, everyone needs access to the financial system that moves those dollars. And that system, well, it's ultimately overseen by the United States. If you want to play in the global economic sandbox, you have to play by America's rules. Period. And this isn't just some dusty, theoretical power that sits on a shelf. Oh no. Washington is very aware of this leverage, and, as we're about to see, has been using it more and more as its go-to foreign policy tool. Just check out this timeline. Since the year 2000, the use of financial sanctions has absolutely exploded, and it accelerated like crazy in the last decade. We're talking about over 3,000 sanctions being deployed. It's a clear shift away from traditional diplomacy or military action to what is essentially economic warfare. And the targets of these sanctions aren't small fish. They are entire nations. We're talking about countries like Iran to try and curb its nuclear program, Venezuela in response to its political crisis, North Korea to halt its weapons development, and, of course, Russia. In pretty much every case, the goal is the same: isolate the country and cut off its economic lifeblood. This really drives home what a modern battlefield can look like. It's not a fight with soldiers or bombs anymore. It's fought with banking regulations and access codes. The weapons are frozen accounts and being kicked out of the global financial club. It's a clean, quiet, and yet devastatingly effective form of warfare. So it seems like an unbeatable system, right? An unassailable advantage. But here's the twist. This incredible weapon has a single critical vulnerability, an Achilles heel that could, well, bring the whole thing crashing down. Because here's the thing, the more you use a weapon, the more your adversaries learn how to defend against it. And for the first time, really, since the end of World War II, the dollar's dominance is facing a real coordinated challenge. The system is under strain. This slide lays out the conflict perfectly. On the left, you've got the established system, everything running on the US dollar and its SWIFT network. But over on the right, you see these alternatives bubbling up. For instance, Russia is now selling its oil to China and getting paid directly in Chinese yuan, completely bypassing the dollar. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they're building their own payment infrastructure to rival SWIFT. You see, every time a unilateral sanction is used, it just acts as a huge incentive for these other countries to build out this parallel system, pushing us toward that multipolar financial world you see right there. And this brings us to the final calculation. What is the one thing that actually holds this entire dollar-based empire together? It's not military might. It's not even economic size. It's something far more fragile. It all comes down to one 5-letter word: trust. That is the Achilles heel of this entire system. It only works because the world trusts the dollar to be stable, and maybe even more importantly, to be a neutral medium of exchange. But every time the system is used as a weapon against a country, it forces every other nation on Earth to ask a simple question. Could we be next? And that question, that's what causes trust to erode.
And that leaves us with this final provocative thought. Maybe the greatest threat to America's financial power isn't another country, but the very act of using that power. In winning today's financial battles, is America slowly losing the long-term economic war? That's the question now being written on the world's balance sheet.